Security is by far one of the biggest concerns when talking about availability in today's multi-cloud data centers.
Just back in 2018, the average cost of a data breach was close to $4 million. You want headlines for the right reasons, not for the wrong ones. Therefore, just like with insurance, we need to make sure we choose the right plan in order to minimize risk as much as we can. Just as we do for apps with App Dynamics and infrastructure with Intersight and ACI, we'll start by having a single view for all security matters with SecureX. SecureX is a SaaS platform that connects the breadth of Cisco's integrated portfolio and your entire security infrastructure for a consistent experience that unifies visibility, enables automation, and strengthens your security across network, endpoint, cloud, and application. It also provides third-party integrations as well as automation options to streamline how you and your teams respond to specific security incidents, which may include notifications only, or even go all the way to automatically create WebEx teams, tickets on ServiceNow, and a specific workload or user isolation using Tetration and AMP for endpoints. The result is simplified security from users to applications built into the solutions you already have. Now, let's zoom into the multi-cloud data center portion of it, where applications are constantly communicating to users, devices, and other applications. Up to this point, it had been particularly complicated to protect workloads, since we would normally use blacklisting or access control lists as the main method of protection for blocking well-known ports while allowing the rest. The problem with this approach is that each server has 65,535 TCP ports. And don't forget about UDP, which has exactly the same amount, each of them being a potential entry point for a hacker to exploit. In other words, think of your house having more than 130,000 doors, windows, or access points where thieves could potentially enter. You definitely don't want to leave them unlocked, right? You can't block all ports because applications need to communicate, and it is really hard to enable zero trust, which means understanding which ports each application uses and only allowing communication on such ports while blocking the rest. This is where Tetration comes handy. Tetration is a security analytics platform that can be consumed as SaaS or on-premises, and that allows you to see everything anywhere, enabling zero trust and threat protection. Tetration, which can be integrated to SecureX, works at the workload level, analyzing every flow and process and storing all this information historically for you. It relies on agents, which you can easily install on a myriad of operating systems on any cloud or hardware. Once installed, it performs a smart application dependency mapping, which results in a VXlan suggested policy, showing each application layer and the ports your applications are currently using. You can easily see who is talking to whom, on which ports and which subnets. Now, with that information, you can implement a layered defense approach by consistently implementing your policy at the workload, network, or even layer 4, layer 7 devices layer. Let's start at the workload level by taking a deeper look into Tetration. We just ran our first application dependency mapping, which means that all conversations from the different endpoints with agents were captured during a specific period of time. Now, with that information, Tetration has built a suggested default policy definition, only allowing communication from those identified conversations while denying the rest. You can always adjust your policies or even create new policies on top of that through the Absolute Policies tab. For example, let's imagine you were notified of a new vulnerability through a security intelligence group like Talos, and you don't know how many endpoints are potentially vulnerable to that CVE in your multi-cloud data center. With Tetration, you can automatically block traffic to the internet from all nodes that may be vulnerable by creating an absolute policy rule that includes such CVE identifier. We can now see that Tetration has already identified endpoints with such vulnerability. However, it is not enforcing any rules for now. As you can see, right now one of the vulnerable nodes has still access to everything, including the internet. So, the only thing we need to do in order to enable enforcement and microsegment the workloads based on the defined policies is to go to the Enforcement tab and click on Enforce. The policy would then be enforced and executed sequentially. First, the absolute policies, restricting the CVE vulnerable devices to talk to the internet. Then, the default policies based on the conversations discovered by our initial application dependency mapping, and last, the implicit deny any. As you can see, the vulnerable endpoint has no connectivity to the internet anymore, since the Tetration agent is performing enforcement locally. And the same rules apply to any other endpoint identified as vulnerable. You can always disable enforcement if you need to in order to bring everything back to its original point, which would leave the Tetration agent in visibility mode only, allowing that endpoint to access the internet again. Tetration agents also provide granular visibility into the workload at the process level, which can help you troubleshoot faster than ever. If we go back to the main dashboard, you can also see other functionalities Tetration provides, like software vulnerabilities, correlate process hashing scores, even network compliance and segmentation scores, amongst others, allowing you to react faster if needed.